Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. Cool Your Heels with Lillian, heard every Tuesday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern on AMFM247.com. And this afternoon, our special guest on Cool Your Heels is Michelle Jewsbury, who wrote a book about domestic violence called But I Love Him. So, good afternoon, Michelle. How are you doing?
I'm great. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, I wanted to have you on the show because domestic violence is still with us.
Yes, very much so. And it's very prevalent in our society and societies around the world.
Absolutely. In fact, in the good old days, you would hear people say, but she belongs to him and I don't have the right to say anything about it.
That is very true. The women's empowerment really didn't come to fruition until the civil rights movement, and we were property of men. We couldn't get a credit card in our name. We couldn't buy a house without a man's approval. Things have changed drastically in the past 100 years, but yes, 100 years ago, we were the property of men.
And guess what? We still are. I found that when my spouse died, and I called up to take care of everything, they were not that cooperative because a lot of them do not have any help or instructions of how the wife of the deceased spouse does things. And they count on the fact that the guy is going to outlive the woman, but it doesn't work that way. So there's a lot of things that still need mending, and domestic violence is one of them. So what inspired or what motivated you to write a book about your domestic violence?
So I was involved in an abusive relationship starting in 2012 and ending roughly the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. I started documenting what happened to me, not understanding the severity of the situation. When I documented it, it came out in a play format, so I wrote and performed a 65-minute solo play with the same title as my book called But I Love Him, and I performed that in front of a nearly sold-out crowd in the Whitefire Solo Fest in February of 2016 and again in the Hollywood Fringe Festival. From there, so many women and men came up to me and started telling me their stories about domestic violence, about what's happened to them and about how they've escaped or how they're still involved. And from there, I knew that I had to get my story out. I had to be that voice to the voiceless and empower survivors and also victims to break free from the situations that they're in. So from there, I decided that I needed to publish my memoir, which is the same title as my play, But I Love Him. And you can find that on Amazon.com. And I had to tell the truth. I had to speak about everything that happened and about the severity of domestic violence. And I did a lot of research and put in red flags, put in statistics, but I had to speak up.
And you, especially if you have children who are being abused right along with you or seeing their mother or father being abused, it sets a very bad example of how not to have a relationship.
Well, hurt people tend to hurt people. And that's what happened in my situation. My abuser, we'll call him Paul, he witnessed his stepfather beating his mother. And in that situation, I don't think he acknowledged that he saw it firsthand, but he heard the violence. And in that, he then became an abuser later on in life. So there's a lot of repressed emotions that he never got to deal with. And then so he then became an abuser. But it can also be the opposite way. People and children who are in abusive relationships with their parents tend to also become a victim later on in life. So the cycle perpetuates. And in order to stop the cycle, we have to speak up about the epidemic in order to make significant change.
So for the men and women who are listening, and this also includes people who are dating, listen up, millennials, just because you're not married to the person doesn't mean that if you're in an abusive relationship, you have to stay there. What are some of the signs that indicate that something is not quite right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I wasn't actually married. I was involved in my relationship just as a boyfriend-girlfriend. I'm on that millennial cusp, so I'm one of those people that you're kind of talking about. However, there were a lot of red flags in my situation. And the first red flag that people should really be wary of is how your partner speaks to the people around them. Check out social media. We are in a day and age where we have internet at our fingertips, and you can research anybody online. So look at their profiles. Look at how they are interacting with society. When you are with them one-on-one, look at how they're acting and speaking to the people around you. Look at how they're speaking to you. Are they taking too much control of the relationship? Are they not allowing you to speak up? And then are they moving the relationship forward too quickly? That was one of the key red flags that I chose to ignore. My abuser wanted to move in only 3 to 4 months after we started dating, and he wanted me to quit my job, wanted to take care of me, wanted to pay off all my bills, and he moved it so fast that it really caught me off guard, and I fell into the cycle very quickly. So there's many red flags, but those are just a few.
The others, I think, are if he tries to start isolating you, controlling you, deciding who you should see, who you shouldn't see, what he likes, what he dislikes. If he starts asking you to change your hair color.
Well, yes, 100%. Isolation is key. So when my abuser told me to quit my job and when he asked me to move in with him, this was, a 3-hour drive away from where I lived. So I was isolated, and that was his tactic. And I think that that's a subconscious tactic of most narcissistic abusers. I don't think that it's very apparent to their consciousness, but every one of them do this.
And the other thing is, too, if they start calling you and they don't find you, they'll say, oh, we're just worried about you. I'm just concerned about you. I want to make sure you're okay. Well, listen up, folks. Even I was smart enough to dodge somebody like that because I thought it was rather odd that somebody would be checking up on me so quickly after just meeting him.
Yeah, that is definitely a red flag. There are the situations where, of course, they really are checking up on you, but most of the time when people are that controlling that quickly into the relationship, you really got to take a good look at the relationship and run away before it gets too bad.
Absolutely. And if it's possible, I know a lot of ladies don't like doing that, but you need to find out from his friends and neighbors what he really is like, because the way he's acting with you is different from the way he's acting with everybody else. And that's a telltale sign.
If I would have actually spoke to a lot of his friends and neighbors prior to me moving in with him and continuing our relationship, I would have discovered that he has this temptation, this history of abusing women because he had abused the gal before me, and that his temper is more of a Jekyll and Hyde, where sometimes he is this amazing, awesome human being in society, but behind closed doors, he turns into a monster. And if I would have actually done my research, then I would have known that information about him.
And don't be, if you see a picture of him, because there are always a lot of pictures, make sure it's a really current picture, not something for 2 or 3 years ago or what he hopes you see when you look at him type dealy, because I have started dating again, and what you see is not necessarily what you get.
Well, those are dating sites in general.
Well, I know, I'm not talking about dating sites, but I'm talking about they usually, I've had a couple of guys from LinkedIn approach me and they send me their pictures and stuff. And I have learned that just because they sent you a picture doesn't mean that's what they look like now.
Well, that's true. That is not significant of being a possible abuser, but it is of, self-conscious issues, things like that, for sure.
Well, it's, when people don't want their secrets to be known, they put up a front. and they only let you see what they want you to see. And that's all I'm saying. Is to be careful.
Yeah, definitely be careful though, 100%. In this day and age, especially with online dating, don't meet somebody for the first time at your house. Go to a crowded public area. Make sure that you tell a friend where you're going. So if all of a sudden you disappear or something happens to you, then they know where to look. So there are definitely some precautions to take when dating in this day and age.
Now, how difficult was it for you to walk away?
So I left my abuser roughly 7 different times before I finally actually left. There's a cycle in domestic violence, and the third part of the cycle is the apology stage. That apology stage is what keeps most victims trapped in abusive relationships. When he or she says, "I'm so sorry, I love you so much, please don't leave me, I promise I will never do this again." Well, that apology stage will keep us, the survivors, continually coming back because we so desperately want that relationship to work. Well, I left, like I said, over 7 different times before I finally had a breaking point. And typically in abusive relationships, people have to have that breaking point to actually leave. Mine was when I found out that he was having affairs on me. For some reason, subconsciously, I was taking the emotional, the physical, the sexual violence, the financial abuse. But as soon as I found out he cheated on me, I couldn't take it any longer. So that's when I started to really exit the relationship. And then roughly 9 or 10 months later, he was still financially and emotionally abusing me during that time. I got a call, or I received a message from a girl that he had been seeing up to that point, and he had just put her head through a glass window. At that point, I had to make a decision. I had to be like, well, am I going to continue in this relationship where he is still financially abusing me because I was trying to get him to pay off the debts that he had incurred on our credit cards, and emotionally abuse me, or am I actually going to take action against this? And so I chose to let my credit go to crap for a little while and to take a stand for my life and the lives of women around the world, and especially the women that he had violently assaulted after me as well.
Did he pay for what happened to her?
So he did serve a repercussion. She took criminal charges against him, and I decided to do a civil lawsuit against him. I'm not really legally allowed to say much about that situation, although we have settled and it is now under the rug, but he did pay a repercussion. And in order for an abuser to recover from abusing, he has to pay some sort of repercussion in order to change. I actually believe that abusers can change, but they have to put in a significant effort to do so.
They have to go through counseling, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, 100% go through counseling. I wrote in my book there's a practice called HEALS. I don't really recall exactly the steps, but it is a lot of counseling, and it's similar to a 12-step process where the first step is acknowledging and realizing that you do have a problem. And oftentimes narcissistic abusers don't ever admit that there is a problem. They tend to say that, well, I was triggered, I was busy at work, it was your fault. And then the victim tends to internalize that and say, well, maybe I did trigger him. So it's more like gaslighting that happens, where he or she, the abuser, will tell the victim the way things happened in the abuser's world and then discredit how the victim is feeling. So that's another tactic that abusers tend to take in order to keep their victims in solitude and in the relationship.
And what kind of steps did you have to take in order to get yourself back to where you were?
So I really believe in writing therapy, but as soon as I started writing and documenting, I knew that it was really bad. Like I didn't understand how severe my relationship really was. So then I decided to enroll in therapy, and I had an amazing, awesome therapist. It's really important to find somebody who you really connect with. And his name is Dr. Douglas Gosney, and I was with him for roughly 4.5 years. And he helped me to recover. He helped me understands that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve that treatment, and that I do have a voice. And then, of course, I started speaking up. So talking about what happened to me will help to heal you. So if you have listeners out there who are in abusive relationships, speaking up really does heal, because there is something called adverse childhood experiences, where you experience something as a child or a young adult, or even, in your 20s in a relationship. And then if you try to suppress those emotions, if you don't speak up about it, then it comes out in physical and or emotional ailments when you get older. So in order to stop, the chronic headaches, the anxiety, the autoimmune disorders, you have to speak up about what's happened to you. And if you're too shy or not ready to speak up in public, make sure you talk about it in therapy sessions.
Okay, so that's when you finally get yourself better. Can you allow yourself to go back out and form a relationship or go out on a date with any repercussions?
Yeah, in the very beginning when I started dating, I would always tense up if I had a male figure in my vehicle, because my abuser would constantly assault me in a car. But that dissipated once I started speaking up and healing. And I ended up dating a really amazing man. It didn't work out. We're still friends to this day. It didn't work out for regular, normal reasons. But he really made me feel like that I was lovable again. And this relationship happened, I want to say 10 months after I finally broke free. So the end of 2016 is when I finally started dating again. And then now, I'm single and dating like an average person would date, and trying to find that one, and just making sure to look out for red flags and making sure that I don't attract the same type of abuser into my life. So in order to do that, I have to elevate myself and continue working on myself. So I have to change in order for me to not attract the same type of man.
And that's usually what happens even when people do get rid of their abusers, is that if they don't change their behavior, they have a tendency to attract the same kind of person all over again.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't elevate yourself, if you don't work on yourself, if you don't speak up about what's happened to you, and you suppress all these emotions and you make no changes, then it is cyclical. You will definitely find the same type of partner again and again and again. And in order to break free from that cycle, you have to make those changes in order for you to have an even more fulfilled life and a fulfilled relationship.
And if that means going back to a therapist, folks, you go back to the therapist and find out who you are, what you really want, and what you need to do in order not to attract the same type of person back into your life.
100%. And I mean, don't take this wrong. If you have attracted that person over and over again, it's not your fault. But now you just need to take those steps forward so you don't attract those same people again. And that's just elevating yourself, putting positive material in your brain, surrounding yourself with positivity, with amazing individuals, reading great books, et cetera, et cetera.
And parents, if your children are abusing you, beating up on you, hitting you, locking you out of the house, it's time for you and them to go see a therapist. Don't think just because they're your children they won't try to abuse you if they have I call a mean streak in them, because some of them do.
Yeah, some do. So there's a book that I recently read called A Child Called It, and it was an amazing book about one of the most severe cases of child abuse in California. Nowadays, in the United States, there are precautionaries. So if you're being abused as a child, you need to speak up to law enforcement and police, but you also don't need to falsify. The problem that we're seeing now is not only children, but survivors of domestic violence, per se survivors, falsifying what happened to them. Then it's making it even more difficult for police officers and prosecutors to come in and actually take us seriously as survivors and victims. So if something is happening to you, though, make sure to go to police, speak up, and get yourself out of that situation.
Absolutely. And if some classmate starts, and you're a student, and they start making sexual advances to you, you're being abused. So tell somebody about it.
Yeah, sexual harassment is a huge thing, and then bullying in schools. So cyberbullying and also bullying in person are two huge epidemics that are happening right now. And if that is happening, then yes, you do need to speak up. But you also need to realize that what this bully is saying to you does not define who you are. It is not who you are. They're trying to get under your skin. And what we're seeing is a lot of suicide in schools right now because of bullying. So talk to a therapist in your school, go to the counselor, talk to an adult, tell people about what's happening to you so this can stop.
It's important for you to open your mouth, and it's important enough for you to understand that you're in control and that nobody else can control you.
Yes, 100%. I love that.
Well, you can borrow that then, or take it. People usually take my, can I use this, Lillian? And, you know what I'm saying? They're already using it. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? You know, whatever's going to make it easy for you to get the message across, because I know that so many kids don't open their mouths at all for whatever the reason. And you need to learn how to stand up for yourself, because if you don't do it, nobody else is.
Exactly. And bullying is a huge problem. And we're seeing so many young children commit suicide because of the bullying in schools, in sporting events, et cetera, when you're younger. So you have to speak up. And the good thing about speaking up is you can actually use your experiences and monetize what's happened to you and help people worldwide. That's what I've been able to do. I was able to speak up, yes, but I wrote my book, and then I was able to use my book as a business card, a calling card for me to speak up about a lot of these horrendous things that are happening in the world. But now I'm able to teach and equip people and coach people on how to break through obstacles in their lives by using my experience in domestic violence.
And that makes all the difference. So, Michelle, please tell everybody where they can find you on the World Wide Web, how they can get in touch with you. If you have a website, give that. Tell people where they can find your book and anything else that you know that they will need to arm themselves against the big bad wolves of the world.
Great, yes. So first off, if you are interested in receiving a complimentary digital download of the introduction of my book, all you need to do is text obstacles to 26786. Again, it's obstacles to 26786. You can also find information about my masterclass on www.unsilencemyvoice.com. And I also am CEO and founder of a nonprofit organization that works worldwide to end domestic violence. And you can find more information about that at unsilencedvoices.org.
Terrific. And ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, you can hear this interview with Michelle all over again at https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. On the right-hand side of the page is a menu. Scroll down until you come to Cool Your Heels. Click on it. Don't have a cell phone or a tablet? No problem. We provide you with a sizzle number. Just call the number up on your old-fashioned phone, and you can hear the audio MP3 stream of this interview all over again. You can also hear it next Tuesday evening on AMFM247.com under Lillian Caldwell. So that's AMFM247.com/Lillian Caldwell, and you can hear this Tuesday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. And before you go away and stray, Jules Renard had this to say in 1899, to think is not enough. You must think of something. Thank you all very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.
Thank you.